Welcome to the Scale Up Valley podcast, where we bring the best CEOs, founders, and investors to help you scale a business from 1 million to 1 trillion. Today's guests are two very special ones. One is a comeback, Leo Bottary, the founder and managing partner at Peernovation. Leo, it's awesome to get you back on the show. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Leo, as you know, is also the author of three amazing books on Peernovation, a concept that we'll discuss later on the power of peers. And we also have, and Leo is joining from San Diego, so California, the US. And we also have an amazing special guest as well, Chris Zhuang, account leader of Adaptive Growth Solutions, joining from Shanghai.
Yeah,
Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, thank you, Mike. Pleasure to be here.
It's awesome. So we are today, as you know, I'm in Portugal, representing Europe. Leo is representing Americas, and I'm representing EMEA, and Chris is representing Asia Pacific, and we are representing the world. So we hope that we are a good representation of the world.
Yeah,
so
really put it that way.
Responsibility.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
And yeah, well, let's start with quick intros for the folks that don't know you yet. Chris, would you like to start?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mike. And my name is Chris Zhuang, and I'm based in Shanghai. And for my connection with Leo, it was that I translated and published his book, Peernovation, here in China. And of course, it's in Chinese. So now the book has been in place for 2 years. And ever since that, me and Leo, we've been working on quite different initiatives related with how to bring the best into the teams and how to leverage the energy and dynamics in the team to the best.
That's awesome. And Leo, tell us, remind the ones who didn't have the pleasure to hear the previous episodes, please go there and let us know more about you.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, I'm a founder and managing partner of Peernovation LLC. And basically what I do is take what CEO peer advisory groups have been doing so brilliantly in terms of how they help one another, and taking those principles and helping companies apply them to their teams. To really just drive higher performance. So that's a lot of the work I do. I do it both with groups and teams. I'm also an adjunct professor for Rutgers University, of opinion columnist and external advisory board member for CEO World Magazine, and just happy to be hanging out with you guys.
Sounds awesome. So and maybe let's start here. So there's a topic that the three of us are very passionate about, which is building high-performing teams, especially in the world that we are becoming more and more global, that we need to be able to speak different languages, mean different cultures, and be able to, leverage that diversity in order to bring more innovation and go further in terms of our vision, in terms of our execution. So how does, and maybe here, Leo, I would still get you on the call to explain a bit more how the power of, peer groups can help us to build high-performing teams, and how, having the right peers around us is also able to drive innovation. And that's why we have this concept of peer innovation. So if you can unblock us all this peer innovation and all those principles for us, it would be great.
Sure. So I think very simply, we learn better and we do better when we do it together, right? So just what CEO peer advisory groups do is they come together because they recognize that they are kind of alone, in terms of leading their organization. Oftentimes they don't have people to talk to about the challenges they face and what's going on. Sometimes it's not something they want to share necessarily with their employees or bring home or always share with their board of directors. So to have a group of trusted advisors that they can work with, becomes really powerful. And, again, because we learn better when we learn together. And you know, we've all experienced this. I mean, anyone who's ever been in a book club, for example, knows that if you bring 3, 4, 5 people together who read the same book and you talk about it with one another, you're going to get insights into that content that you'll never get alone. And so when people come together, whether it's in a group or a team, and they start sharing their perspectives on any given challenge or opportunity or anything like that, they get a lot more out of it than they would ever get if they had to go it alone. So, you know, this is why we have teams, because everybody brings different skill sets to the table. And the more we can listen to one another, appreciate each other's gifts, and I think work together and truly be collaborative, there's some amazing things that happen, and it happens in peer groups, it happens in teams all the time, and it becomes I think essential to be thinking about how can we make our teams better, because they can always get better. In fact, the teams that I work with, it's the higher performing teams that tend to see even greater opportunities for themselves to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when we get to that moment when we are able to design together the vision that we want to achieve, and we are all on the same page, we definitely start seeing execution going faster, moving forward, and everyone excited about the progress and celebrating the wins, and also don't feeling so much the pain of the lesson learned, of the defeat, in a more negative word. So, and I think that we see people enthusiastic about, oh, we didn't find a way this time to crack this market, or to open, or to launch this new product, or to go to market, whatever it is, what is the strategic initiative. But definitely we see a team that has a positive environment, a positive culture to move forward. And Chris, I know that you are very passionate about a concept called transcultural leadership. Tell us a bit more about what is this all about.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Mike. And as we might know that 100% of Fortune 500 companies and 100% of the top 100 local Chinese companies, they have overseas business or overseas stakeholders, suppliers, customers. And to work with this whole bunch of the people across the border, I mean, not really the geographical border, but also the cultural border, sometimes can cause a little bit challenge during the communication, during the collaboration. So this is something that we might leverage Peernovation out of the whole context, that we can be able to learn from each other, and also to understand more from each other and to each other. I think this is way more interesting. And oftentimes we see the top of the iceberg, which might be low quality, same product, but lower quality in different countries. Same type of construction, but sometimes they have flaws from here and there outside the border. But sometimes people's feedback, the client's feedback, can be very different on one kind of the service from different countries. But these are all the tips of the iceberg. Deep down, there might be something related with this transcultural leadership challenge.
I love it. And you were just talking about it, and I was thinking that, for instance, I have a lot of exposure to doing workshops across Southeast Asia, and when you ask something in I would not like to generalize, but in some of those countries, and you want an answer of yes or no, especially getting feedback on how did it go? Did you enjoy? What can I improve? So it's very rude if you share direct feedback about how I could improve my workshop. So of course, if I ask, he will always say, yeah, it was amazing, it was fantastic. And nobody will tell, especially in public, right? Nobody will tell me what I need to improve. This is not correct. If you ask this, maybe, again, it depends from state to state, Leo, correct? In the US, I might have, and especially in New York, I will have a much more direct feedback about how did it go? What I could have improved in terms of my performance, right? I would say the same in Southern European countries compared to the Northern European ones. So what is acceptable from a social perspective is very different from region to region, right? So, and we need to be able to navigate there when we are having more and more members of the team, especially when they are also joining remotely nowadays, right? And we don't have all of them in the same office, right?
Yeah, that's right. Talking about that, Mike, this just reminds me one of the cases our team, Adaptive Growth Solutions, we've been working on. There is this customer, it's a big private equity firm. They have their offices both in London and Hong Kong. So there is this lady working in their Hong Kong office, doing all the presentation to their London colleagues. But oftentimes people just raise their hand, ask more details. So this lady got deeply challenged, and he's got his assumption that maybe my English is still not that good.
Right.
In one of the workshops, we've been over there, we asked them this question and try to ask them to do a little bit of the mirroring, which is like you look at the mirror, see yourself.
Yeah.
It turned out that on the other side of the table, people from the London office just would like to have more information. So this is some kind of, I cannot say which is right or which is wrong. Sometimes we have to just drop off the judgment sometimes.
Yeah.
Judgment over others and to ourselves.
Right. And same I feel. So when someone is sharing direct feedback in some cultures, it is a huge sign of respect, right? So I care about you. I want to share feedback with you because I know you are great and you can even get greater, right? So I want to invest, I want to share my feedback, and I hope it is useful to you. Other cultures will say, oh, why are you sharing feedback with me? I didn't ask anything. So what is going on? You are making me lose my face in front of my peers. So I would prefer to have this conversation one-on-one. Please don't have this conversation in a group setting. And this connects with a book that I love, and bringing Leo to the conversation as well, which is the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team from Patrick Lencioni, right? About the first ingredients in the positive or in the negative, trust or lack of trust, right? How can we create those environments where teams can thrive? And I know that you have a set of principles to make those peer groups work and how to build those more cohesive, high-performing teams.
So 2 things. One, I want to mention that the kind of cross-cultural feedback stuff you were talking about earlier reminds me of a scene. I think we talked about it one time from Ted Lasso, Apple TV, right? And there's all these players that are around, and one of the players says something very direct to the other, and all the players start getting looking really worried, and someone says, oh, he's not being rude, he's just being Dutch, and then they all go, okay, that was fine. So they kind of understood that there was a whole different context and evaluation and how feedback is dealt with in that country versus elsewhere. But no, I think when you talk about trust in the 5 dysfunctions of a team, if you read Lencioni's definition of trust in that book, it is the definition of psychological safety, right? It's that ability to be open and vulnerable with others. And one of the things that I try to do in groups is to get people to very, very intentional about that, because all of us don't come not only from a cultural standpoint, but even as human beings. Some of us just by nature are very open. We'll tell our life story to anyone who will listen. There are others who just are more private by nature and a little, keep things a little closer to the vest. So it's a matter of trying to get people to connect with the purpose of the group. Why are we here? What are we here to do for one another? Which hopefully fuels a mindset of saying, you know what, if we're here to do this, then I need to be all in. I need to do my very best at being open. And part of that is having people feel a sense of belonging in the group, where they can truly, over time, especially bond with one another. These groups also have an absolute agreement that what happens in the room stays there, that confidentiality is sacrosanct, and it provides that safety to know that whatever conversation we're going to have here, it stays here. It doesn't go elsewhere. We're not going to be talking about one another afterwards. We also talk about the more prepared you are for a meeting, the more likely you will actively participate. The more practiced that you get at this, the easier this starts to become. The more when you see someone else in the group model really great sharing behaviors, right? And you watch how the group leans into that person's challenge and how much that person and very likely several other people benefit from that conversation as well. That kind of gives everyone else that tacit permission that it's okay for me to do it as well next time I have something that I want to speak to the group about. And just a few other things, listening behaviors start to be really important. You can lose psychological safety fast if it looks like only half the people in the room are paying attention to something that you're trying to share that is really meaningful for you. And last but not least, as human beings, I think no matter where we grow up and where we live, we tend to gravitate to things that work. If it's going to be effective, even if I don't love the idea about opening up and sharing, if I know that on the other side of that is something that's truly going to benefit me and benefit others, then I'll be far more likely to kind of take the plunge, if you will, and do that.
Right. Sounds great. A lot to reflect here. And this is all about great leadership, world-class leadership. How do we create those conditions, and how do we bring a team that is really complementary and that has the conditions to be set up for success, instead of sometimes when we have a toxic leadership, we are almost seeing or almost proving why the person will not be the right fit for the seat. And sometimes it's not only the leader, it's also the peers that are in the team, and we see that there is something dysfunctional about that culture. Chris, what do you like to add to that on how to practice this transcultural leadership, how to make it grow, how to prepare our mindset as leaders to be able to navigate these transcultural waters, let's say?
Yeah, just like we just mentioned about no judgment to others and to ourselves. And there is another very important point to share about this transcultural leadership, which is difference is difference, which sounds like a little bit cliche, I know that, but it is true. Difference is difference. People got to understand that. There is parallel world anywhere else in our lives that people do things that is different. They can also nail things, make things happen, and make their own success, but totally in their own way. We get to see that happen. We have another customer, which is an industrial giant, Fortune 500. They send engineers from China, everywhere to the Southeast Asia countries. But they receive a lot of negative feedbacks from the collaboration on site, which is the installation and the construction engineering stuff. So we just digging a little bit more, understand that they have a lot of challenges culturally instead of technically, because they are all, well-seasoned professionals in engineering. The thing is that here in China, most of us, we are right-handed. So it's very common for us to wrap up things with right hand and then hand it over with your left hand, which is a great offense in Southeast Asian countries, because they believe this is very impolite. Mm-hmm. So things just like that, because people just think things can be very different. In our culture, in this culture, we tend to hand over things with two hands instead of right hand. But in their culture, they prefer you use your right hand instead of your left hand. So just things can be done in the same manner, but just totally with different methodology. So we're gonna have to understand difference is difference.
Yeah. And how do you see in terms of your in terms of the Chinese approach or the Chinese culture, what has been the acceptance to this concept of peer groups, right? So peer groups is something that they are also not so usual, even in Europe. I would say the UK is much more common, and in the US it's even much more developed, this concept. How do you see the acceptance and also the content of the book of Leo? What has been the reaction that you see coming from China?
I can say that peer group in China has been growing like very fast. Ever since the very first brand of peer advisory business entered China around 2010, so it has been I can say a well-seasoned business already, and which adopt all the standard and all the protocol of what is going on in United States, psychological safety, and people can talk to each other and people can be open to each other. What happens here stays here. What is talked about here stays here. And also people challenge each other in a caring way and also share their insight and different perspectives, committed to help each other to be the best. So I can say that stays the same. But of course, there are a lot of the copycats in the marketplace, but we can just, they're not in the topic. They're not in the discussion.
But did you feel any kind of resistance or any kind of cultural shift? Or because of course inside the same culture, as we were saying, each of us might be raised in a specific culture, but we might be developing a different culture ourselves, right?
Yeah,
because
that's
we
right.
think in a different way, and we have a different set of beliefs, a different set of principles, right? So but taking do you think that those people that are kind of embracing the power of peers, the power of peer groups in China, are kind of outliers in terms of the Chinese culture, or do you think it's becoming the average that is embracing more and more the power of peers?
Well, I think that's a great question. I can say at the beginning, people are not that much opened up with this idea, and they have a very strong, let's say, a self-defense immunity system in place. They say, okay, so what happens in my business stays with myself. It happens a lot. It happens a lot. But after, I think, not very long time, people understand that the perspectives and input from peers, who are committed to your success, they're also very valuable, and you cannot get it from anywhere else. I still remember there is this one scenario happened in one of the meetings. I'm not going to mention which meeting, which group, but so there was this coach asked the members to write down something they would like to share on their eulogy. So this is quite challenging culturally, yes, in this part of the world. And some of the members, they say, okay, I'm not gonna write it because I just can't face it. It's just too hard. And this coach somehow just crafted a little bit of this question. He's like, okay, just suppose that in your dream, you are going to the other side of the heaven palace. So that's a little bit superstitious story in our culture. So what are you going to say to the headmaster of that part of the world? That's quite interesting. So people somehow just start to get opened up and start to speak up about what they're trying to to talk about a legacy, to talk about what is left behind, and to talk about their whole life, to talk about way more than that. I think it just somehow you need to be a very, very delicate in crafting all these questions and scenarios. Otherwise, it will just ruin the dynamics instantly. Yeah.
I think a lot of this goes back though to, Chris, this idea of difference is difference, I think, is really at the heart of this in so many respects, right? Because we are, I can tell you oftentimes in the US, people are brought up with this idea that in social situations, never get into conversations about religion and politics, okay? So you are hardwired to believe that those topics are just fodder for a fight, right? That people are going to, do that.
Yeah.
With the unfortunate part is that if we actually could have those conversations, if people were more willing to engage in those conversations socially and recognize that it's not threatening to me. It's not, I don't have to be defensive. I would just love to learn, for example, with someone about religion. How does faith play a role in your life? What does that look like for you? Just so I understand it better, not so that I'm trying to judge it against my own or how I was brought up or anything like that. Same holds true with people's political beliefs and where they come from and how they're shaped as we grow up. If we were able to have, and now, unfortunately, that range of conversations that we kind of can't have, if you will, is gotten larger. And now we're not asking questions. We're not leaning into these differences that are wonderful, for people, just the things that both of you have shared, and what I've learned just in the past several minutes talking with you all is like, I feel like we could go at this for hours, because we could ask each other questions about things that I think would be so extraordinary. And when you get good groups and great teams, what they really learn how to do is ask each other questions, and do so from a place of true inquiry, not because they're trying to, show somebody up or test someone or anything like that. Kind of to your point in the example that you brought up, Chris. So yeah, I think if we embraced our differences, didn't judge, didn't make assumptions, didn't jump to conclusions, but we're truly open in a way that we may not agree. Ultimately, that's okay, right? But just to understand, and what a different world this would be if we were just better at asking questions and truly open to learning, as opposed to judging and creating divisive situations.
And that's why I like this topic of transcultural leadership combined with peer groups, because I think we know how hard it is to align a team and to keep everyone on the same page, and especially doing this effort, because everyone is looking to the same reality from a different angle, and this is amazing. This is a huge benefit. But then we think about it as an attack, because the other person is not thinking the way I'm thinking, or they don't understand me. They don't get what I'm thinking about, what I'm trying to say, right? But we are also not trying to understand what the other person is trying to tell us, and just going around and saying, you know what, the best VPs, in my perspective, are the ones who are able to think as CEOs, right? Who are able to think about the company as a whole, but they prefer, because they are so passionate about their function, they prefer to stay as leaders of those functions. But they give you permission to have a conversation about marketing, to have a conversation about sales, to have a conversation about customer success, product, engineering, finance, people, right? And then we start, okay, so what are the top 3 priorities, or what is our vision in the long, mid, and short term for us as a leadership team? So if we would be the CEO, what would be our priorities for the long, mid, and short term? And then, okay, knowing that those are the priorities for the company, so what should be our priority? If I was the CMO, what would be my priorities? And this is an amazing exercise just for the marketing leader to listen, what is the feedback from the entire group if I was the CMO? If I was the CRO or the Chief Revenue Officer, what would be my feedback? And then people start talking the same language and understanding where people are coming from, that we are all there trying to support each other to get to the same goal, because there is no clue if one of us is successful and the team is not successful, because I don't care if marketing is producing all the leads, but sales is not converting. I don't care if we have the best product in the world, and congrats to the product guys, but we are not selling at all. I don't care if we have the best people in the company, but we are not able to the best individuals, but we are not able to play as a team. So we are all winning, or we are all learning, right? So I like to see team results as a consequence of, or individual results as a consequence of team results. So and it completely changes the narrative, and in that sense, I think it's a great exercise also in terms of the different cultures and the different approaches that we have in the room. And then we turn an enemy into an opportunity, into an advantage to support each other. Okay, cool. There was a great conversation that we were having recently as a team about the power of AI. So maybe in the future we will not need anymore to have authentic leaders. We just plug in a AI leader and we make things work. I know, Leo, that you had the inspiration and the great job of putting together an article about it on CEO World magazine, where you mentioned that story and that conversation, and you also mentioned us in the article. So thank you. Would you like to share with our audience what we were talking about, the impact of AI in kind of high quality leadership, high performing teams? What is the role of AI as a tool?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, and I think it actually goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the ability to ask questions. AI, at least right now, for how a lot of people use it, depends on the quality of the question that we ask it. So, and it isn't a question of us competing with AI more, it is partnering with AI and recognizing some of what, you know, it can provide. But at least at the moment, you know, the human touch, the human edit, the human, you know, component of partnering with AI is necessary to, you know, the quality of what, you know, we're doing. You know, I think the article you're speaking of, and I've done a few of them, one of them where I literally asked AI to articulate the value proposition of Peernovation. And what I was expecting was that it would, you know, basically pull quotes or things like that and assemble some type of a narrative. And yet it was completely independent of anything. There wasn't one clause in this description of Peernovation that resembled anything I've ever written about it. And yet it was really nicely done. And, you know, with a little edit here or there, or whatever, boom, then I have a whole new expression of my value proposition that I wouldn't have had otherwise. But I think the most recent article you're speaking about is one where I asked, hey, when it comes to kind of today's leaders, what do they really need to be good at? What do they need to know? And I got some really great kind of general pieces like emotional intelligence and agile leadership, sustainability, and things like that. But I think there are other aspects of that where I provided an additional 7 or so items that, you know, I think were adjacent to what they were talking about, but I thought it gave something a little more tangible for people to work with. So, you know, people talk a lot about the nefarious, you know, ways that AI will be problematic for us. And I think that's, you know, always unfortunate that people will abuse something like that. But I think for those of us who, you know, try to embrace it, try to, you know, do our best to understand how to work with it, you know, I think there's a lot of potential. It's really powerful.
Yeah. And I think that there is a specific article where we talk that, you know, AI again is a tool, but what will keep differentiating ourselves, it will keep being, you know, leadership, teams, because it's really, really difficult to copycat the dynamics of a team, to copycat the human creativity, and in that sense, and I think there is another sentence from one of those books that we all appreciate, which is if we are able, you know, to have an aligned team, all focused on the same vision, we are kind of 90% ahead of all the rest of all the other players in the marketplace, right? So this is such a science and the art, and we were talking also today about the science component. So what are the ingredients that we need to enforce or establish or cultivate in order to be able to build those high-performing teams? But then execution, there is also the art component, right? Which is the experience of the leader, the right timing, the personalities of the team, if they are complementary or not. I like to think about leadership as a combination of art and science, right? So we discussed it a lot today about science, right? So, but also, and I think that the three of us respect that, there is an art component and an element that we can't control, right? And that's the beauty of leadership, and that's the vulnerability, and also accepting that we don't know everything. Chris, anything that you'd like to add on that direction in terms of leadership or different cultures, etc.?
Yes, absolutely, Mike. And I have this analog about AI.
Yeah.
So being sharing with a lot of friends in different occasions. 50,000 years ago, there is a pack of wolves just passing by a cave. So there is this little one decide to stay a little bit longer at the entrance of the cave. So he sees fire, he sees food, and he sees Homo erectus, which is us. But the whole pack asks him to come along because when winter comes, the whole pack survives and the lone wolf dies. But this little one decides to stay along with the Homo erectus, which is us. And somehow we became the best friends ever. So human being can never compete with dog in sniffing. We can never compete with them in running. But somehow with their help and with some of, let's say, mutual dynamics, we can keep them under leash or in control. I'm not sure if that is the right term, or maybe we can just work with them and to a better and a very different future. So I think this is AI at this stage. So we need to have regulation and somehow a little bit more creativity with that, so that AI can be a very good friend. Maybe after 1,000 years, if human beings still in place, they will be talking about the same story. By the way, this is storytelling.
Love it. Amazing.
Well, and now, of course, I'm recalling, and this was a conversation the three of us had before when we were talking about AI as a tool, in the way that if you gave a group of people a soccer ball, right, and you gave it to 3 or 4 different teams,
that's right,
somebody's going to be really good at it and someone's going to be really bad at it. So it still matters how the team employs, that, and I think that's very, at least at this stage of things, good way to think about it.
Yeah, I just wanted to go quickly through the 3 books that you wrote, Leo. So the first one was The Power of Peers, and some maybe months later we got to know each other, which has been amazing, and it's great to have you as a friend and an amazing friend. And then you evolved to the second book, where I already had the pleasure of seeing the preview and also make my comments, which was, I always have an issue saying the title of that name. What is the title of
What Anyone Can Do?
What Anyone Can Do. I was almost there. I need to trust my instincts. and finally, the third, it was Peernovation. So what has been the evolution of the free book? So what did you want to, what were the lessons? And by the way, how many years did you have since the publishment of the first book to the last one?
So the first book, The Power of Peers, was published in March of 2016. The second book, What Anyone Can Do, is published in October of 2018. And the third book, Peernovation, was roughly October or so of 2020. So pretty much every 2 years. I've been slacking off now. I haven't written anything since,
Right.
But
so
the idea,
24 next one.
but really quickly, The Power of Peers was written just to have a narrative which basically showed people how and why peer advisory groups for CEOs and business leaders can be so powerful. The second book actually looked beyond those formal peer groups and made the case that, if we just as individuals did a better job of enlisting and engaging the support of others, right? If we didn't see asking for help as a sign of weakness, we regarded it as an act of resourcefulness, that we would all benefit, right? So that if I have a certain aspiration or a certain goal, that I'm going to pull together people that could be really helpful to me in achieving that goal, and I would do the same for them. And the more that we do that, the better and more successful we can be. And the title basically refers to this idea that most people, they're not successful because they're capable of superhuman feats. They don't leap tall buildings in a single bound or anything. Typically, they do the things that anyone can do that most of us left to our own devices never will. So, enlist and engage the support of others, and it'll help you. Then the third book, of course, was the models and frameworks that were developed in The Power of Peers. I've done now well over 500 workshops with groups and teams of companies and all of that. And obviously those models will evolve over time because you learn a lot from, those type of engagements. So what I basically did was put together a book which showed the evolution of the models, which talked about some of the prevailing challenges that groups, and teams have, and talked about some of those. But then, finally, the idea was to show much more specifically how to take what peer groups do so brilliantly, how to bring it into the team in your company. So that's really kind of where that it didn't start out with the intent of a trilogy, but there we go. It kind of has turned out that way. So
yeah, we are expecting the fourth book, and we can't wait for that. So that's a good challenge too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
maybe it'll be on Celebration, and then I'll celebrate the fact that it's over when it's finished.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was offered a copy of a translated version of Power of Peers 2017. And ever after that, this book has been with me all the time during my business trips. Sometimes it will be the bedtime reading. And very powerful, and it somehow just kindle the fire in my heart to start this journey. So with that, thank you very much, Leo.
I thought you just read it at night because it helped you go to sleep quickly.
Oh yeah,
you just
absolutely.
Read a couple
pages
and boom, you're out.
Not really, not really. But yeah, it's a little bit like that late here. It's almost 10 p.m. I'm not sure if you,
That's right.
Different dynamics with technology, everything that is possible now.
I think that what I and Chris are saying is that we would stay here for hours, but I think a good resource to go get to know more about how to build high-performing teams would be to read the free books that Leo has written for us, and go deeper into the way of building high-performing teams for you and to improve you as a leader as well. So guys, I have a challenge for you. We always close the show with a set of 6 quick questions, but I would go to the most important one. Leo has been through those questions, I believe, last time. I'm not sure if when you joined, we already have this sequence, but I will just ask one, which is my favorite one, which is, if you would have the opportunity, and let's go to a very personal place here, challenging the culture. So, which is, if you would have the opportunity to have a coffee or a tea with your younger self, what advice would you offer to your younger Chris and Leo? And maybe Chris, we can start with you.
All right. So if I can have a cup of coffee with a younger version of Chris, I would just say, follow your heart, and always follow your heart.
That's profound. Would you like to elaborate a bit more? Why is it so important for you?
I can just share a little bit more about my personal growth down this road, and I graduated for almost like 22 years. So ever after that, I've worked for in many environments, different business, in different culture across the border, different industry, just so much. But at a certain point, I think maybe it's just 2017 when I was offered the book Power of Peers. I understand that it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what business you are in, or what industry, or what kind of function. The only thing that matters is people.
Yeah.
It's nothing else but people. And we have to really spend more energy, more time, and more wisdom, and more humanity on that.
Yeah.
That will make a whole lot difference.
Yeah, I love it. I love the quote from Jim Rohn that always follows me. You are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, so choose wisely, right? So what are your associations? Because probably you will become the people that you spend the most time with, their thoughts, their habits. Yeah. And Leo, so what about you? If you would have the opportunity to have the coffee with that young, with a lot of hopes and dreams ahead of you at that time, and you keep having, of course, today, what advice would you offer to that young Leo?
Well, first of all, I want to say that Chris's younger self would be too young to drink coffee, I think would be one of the things I would say about that.
That's true.
But for me, I would have definitely embraced the idea of reaching out to my peers much earlier in my life. There's no question about that. Growing up, when I did, it was very much about asking for help was regarded as a sign of weakness. Asking for help or reaching out to others was something that meant you couldn't handle it on your own or something like that. And when I ended up going from a situation in school where you're, just learning was a solo pursuit. You've got the professor or the teacher there, you're taking notes, you're passing in tests or papers, and you're shielding your paper from your neighbor next because you can't copy off each other because you're supposed to, know this stuff. And to move into an environment where it was a collaborative learning session, which I didn't do until much later in life in graduate school, opened a whole world to me about how powerful collaborative learning is. And I've told you guys this before. Collaborative learning would have been called cheating, when I was younger. So I would have told my younger self, reach out to others, ask a lot of questions, and and you can really go far in this world. And I think, to echo Chris's point, it really is about people and being here and helping one another be successful.
Leo Bottary, Chris Zhuang, pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks so much for making the time. It was a pleasure to have this conversation with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah.
And to our community, thanks for being there. We keep bringing you the best of the best to make your life a little bit easier as you scale up your company. See you soon and keep scaling.